We're live on YouTube and ready to start.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Public Works, November 23rd. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting? Can I have a motion? Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Supervisor Bruto. Do I have a second? Supervisor Garrity? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Supervisor Hogan? Mr.
Yes.
Bruno is not on this committee. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yes, no, he is. Mr. Garrity thought he was not, but he is. I take it back. You're fine.
I thought he was. Thank you. I'll call the question again.
Oh, get no respect. I will.
All in favor?
Aye. I didn't.
Opposed? Carried. Kevin, are you okay with, we start with Parks, Rec, and Railroad?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so the first item we have on there is to enter into a new contract with South Warren Snowmobile Club. So this one's going to seem a little bit odd, but you just give me a minute to explain it. This past year, we had already entered into an agreement with the town of Lake Luzerne for the South Warren Snowmobile Club for the 2021 season. In the middle of the year, it was requested that as opposed to entering into that agreement with the town, couldn't we just enter into that agreement with South Warren Snowmobile Club, which we do with all the other clubs. So throughout or halfway through the year, we actually canceled the contract with the town of Lake Luzerne and moved into entering into a contract with the South Warren Snowmobile Club. The issue with that contract is that it went through committee, went through board approval, and it was started, I believe, on August 1st. Which in turn wouldn't allow them to submit all their receipts back to January 1st for all their expenses associated with maintaining the trails. So they couldn't get reimbursed, say, all that $27,000. So this is basically to enter in an agreement with them for that contract to start actually back at 1/1/21, so they could get reimbursed for all their expenses for the entire year. And this will be pushing the limit with them because I believe this will be board approval on the 17th of December, which I just got the message from Julie Butler this morning that the final POs will be on December 17th. And that would be, we'd have to cut them a check for any money for the expenses that they have had this year. So that's the explanation behind this contract.
Do we need to rescind the original?
I'm not sure. I'm actually looking at Amanda.
Yes.
The contract was.
Tim's nodding yes.
Dean's nodding yes. The contract was started as of August 1st. We canceled the one with Gene. That was just a contract that we canceled. Would we have to rescind the previous resolution for this?
Canceling the contract. I don't think it can hurt anything.
We're actually not necessarily canceling it. I think we're just amending the date so it goes back to January 1st as opposed to August 1st, I believe.
So you're actually amending the current contract or you're replacing it?
And would that be correct that this would be, we amended it actually to go back to January 1st?
Correct.
Okay, so it would be an amendment then.
No, you don't want to rescind it.
Do we need to change the language of the resolution then?
So then what I would propose is I would just submit, as opposed to a new contract, I would just submit an amended contract. So I'll submit that resolution to Amanda this afternoon.
You can still take the action on it. We'll just get a different form from Kevin later.
I'll make that.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity. Is there a second? Supervisor Bruno? Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Kevin?
The next item we have on there, the next three items are the contracts for going into next year. So I'll just have Tim Benway, if that's okay, go through those.
Okay, the next four actually resolutions are for the Hague Snowgoers, Northern Warren Trailblazers, South Warren once again for the next year, and Thurman Connection. This is all the 27,000, 27,000, 27,000, and Hay gets 9,000 for next year, and it is budgeted.
Does anybody want to move 2 through 5? Supervisor Dickinson, do I have a second? Supervisor Merlino, thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Devin?
Next item under number 6 is a new contract with Revolution Rail. Revolution Rail did provide us their ridership numbers, I believe, and I see that Mike and Rob are here. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was about 28,000 for this past year for their ridership. And we've had no issues, but we have to come back every year for a renewal of their contract. And next year's contract would be an increase of 5,000 from this year, which was 35,000 to 40,000 next year.
Do Rob and Mike want to address the committee?
Hey guys, so Rob Hart again, my partner Mike Dupie. So yeah, I just wanted to give a quick check-in, and I thought it'd be helpful too to give some context for what those numbers are and give a little bit of color on our impact on the community, and just we had some plans about looking towards 2022 and going forward. So I'll be brief on some of that. So the South Run is our numbers was 22,323. The Hadley Run was 6,478, which is 28,801 riders during a challenging 2021 season with staffing and things like that. But it was a really successful season. We had a lot of great impact on the community and the riders and stuff like that. And Mike can unpack that a little bit better than I can, and then I'll come back real quick.
Yeah, so the Rob mentioned the numbers, and I think we're all kind of aware conceptually of the multiplier effect that we've talked about. 28,000 riders, people coming to the area from literally all over the country, hotel rooms, breakfast, lunch, dinner, doing other things. Beyond that, though, we've got some other interesting numbers to speak to our impact on the county. So Joanne Conlon from the Visit Lake George website has shared with us some of the figures that since our 2019 season, our organic page views from Google, so people who search for RevRail that end up finding their way immediately to the Visit Lake George site, those numbers have tripled, 43,000 in 2019 up to 113,000 in 2021. As well, unique page views. So people who aren't coming back over and over again also tripled from 38,000 to 97,000. And the average time on the page is 4.5 minutes. So it's a lot of people. And every one of those folks is probably planning a vacation. So you multiply that by 2, 3, 4, a number of other people that are learning about Lake George because of their interest in Revolution Rail. And they're not just kind of popping in and popping out after 30 seconds. 4.5 minutes is a pretty amazing amount of time on the webpage. And Joanne also told us that because of that, they took steps to tweak their SEO, their search engine optimization, to take advantage of the fact that people are looking for RevRail. They wanted to take advantage of that to be able to leverage more traffic to the Lake George website. So they did make those technological adjustments behind the scenes, and they are seeing more traffic as a result of that. So this means people who are interested in RevRail are learning more about the area. They're learning about all the different options for things to do in the area. We're actually the number one of all the pages on that site. We're the number one kind of single entity site. There's the ones above us are things to do, lodging, the outlet center, things like that. But we're the number one single entity page on that website. From a jobs perspective, we hired about 50 people across all the sites. Rob mentioned staffing was hard this year. It was hard for everybody. It's always hard in this region. And then the pandemic made it even more challenging. Hadley was a success, even though we were only able to open Fridays through Sundays. And holiday Mondays. We believe we could have been open similar profile to what we did in North Creek, which would have been 7 days a week from kind of mid-June to Labor Day, and then 5 days a week on the shoulders if we could have found enough people. So, but 50 people, we got a lot of kids from the local school, their first jobs, learning really valuable employment skills about dealing with people and the mechanics of the bike and computer skills and things like that if they're working in the station. And one of our well, we've got 7 full-time employees now, full-time meaning year-round. It's been Rob and I for the first couple of years. We've got 5 others. The majority of those folks are based either living in New York or based out of New York. We live in Vermont, but we work out of New York. One of our hires is a guy who graduated out of Johnsburg, out of the Johnsburg Central School, and just came right on board. We've got kids we're writing college applications for, or recommendations for college for, and things like that. So that's been really neat. We think a lot of this, back to the traffic to Lake George as well. I neglected to mention on Facebook, I think a lot of that is driven by our robust social media activity. So we've got 65,000 people following us on Facebook and 15 on Instagram, very active on that, trying to promote. And then turning just really more to grassroots in the community. We've made an effort to reach out into the local community and bring local influencers, people, kind of local stakeholders out on free or discounted rides. So we had the teachers from Johnsburg Central School out. We had students from Indian Lake out, local community influencers in the hamlet of, or in Johnsburg. So folks from North Creek or North River, had a number of you come out with us as well. So we welcome that. We're looking to do more of that. And then finally, I'd close with just straight up donations. So we've made dozens of donations in the local area. Cash and in kind. There's been a bunch right in North Creek, so Tidy the Town, the volunteer fire department, Tannery Pond, the farmers market, the Business Alliance. But we've also made donations in Chestertown, in Hadley, Minerva, Schroon Lake, Glens Falls, Lake George, as well as bigger donations to organizations that maybe cover broader areas like the Adirondack Community Outreach Center and the Adirondack Mountain Club and Adirondack Action. So we're super proud of our record on all of this. It's not for us just about bringing people to ride the bikes. It's about the overall impact on the community. And we're really excited to do a lot more in the coming years.
And then I'll finish with, like, as we look forward to 2022 and beyond, the way we've kind of modeled this is we had the first run up in the north side of the tracks, and then we added the south run, thanks to you guys, in last year, and we did a slow roll into Hadley. We're continuing that roll, and this year our plan is, we've been talking to 1,000 Acres Ranch and Brandon over there to open up there and run from Stony Creek to Thurman. And the big thing for us as far as technologically is we've developed an e-bike, which will allow a lot of people with different abilities and things like that to go longer. So we start to look into longer runs. People have expressed an interest in doing longer runs and things like that. And so we're looking at that. And so with that in mind, we were asking to take over, just to have one tenant sort of take over the whole line, where we would maintain and take over the track, would allow us the flexibility to do those longer runs. And work with different partners along the track that we don't already come into play with. So that's all. That's all we had. Oh yeah, we can.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah. What was the increase over 20 point ridership? You know, it was. I'm not sure the exact number. If you were at the north end of the run, did you increase your ridership?
Yeah, the ridership increase is going to be limited by how many bikes we have and the hours in the day and things like that. So you kind of get to a point with capacity, particularly on the north run, because it requires a bus trip. The south run, I'd have to look that number up, but I would guess that between South and Hadley, the increase year over year was probably between 5,000 and 8,000 riders, and that would have been driven the lion's share of that by Hadley, because last year we were only open for a few weekends testing it in Hadley.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. John, I just want to thank you. I did take that ride and I did want to come back. That e-bike with a longer excursion, that is really, it's a gorgeous ride. And if nobody is tried it out, it really is, and it's amazing. You think tracks are always level, but it's amazing that, there's some grade there, and you can tell the difference. But how do you, a question I was just thinking, because it got my mind moving, how do you do on rainy days?
We give them umbrellas. We go out and we say there's no bad weather, just bad preparation, and we go out rain or shine.
Well, the only thing I'm thinking, because, it can be done and, like the old carriage buggy thing.
Yeah.
Come up or, I mean, hey, just a big umbrella stick on the pole and, but I mean, because really raining or not, it really is just a beautiful ride. Just to be out there, it's the most peaceful thing.
Yeah.
Especially that Hadley going over the bridge and looking down there and, thank God you have those non-removable seat belts there because, some people probably want to, dive off, but really, I want to thank you.
Yeah.
And I really, whatever I can do to help, but I think the board would, for Stony Creek, for Thurman and Stony Creek would be, with a great thing up there. And looking forward to your expansion. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Hajos?
Thank you, Chairwoman Hogan. Just first and foremost, thanks to Rob and Mike for providing that information. One of the things that everybody here on the committee just heard them say is that they were looking to basically expand to the entire track. And Chairwoman Hogan, if you allow me to jump ahead, one of the items that we have under information for discussion is Doug, I apologize if I say your name wrong, Azert. He's from Wild Waters Outdoor Center, which is up in the Glen, and they actually also have an interest in doing rail bikes on the track in their area of the Glen. So it may be a discussion here in committee that if Rev Rail as well as Wild Waters want to use the same portion of the track, where will we head with this?
So let's defer a vote on this resolution until we hear from the Azarts. That sound reasonable, everybody? Okay, great. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Can you guys hang around in case we have other questions? Kevin, did you want to skip ahead to the Azarts?
We could do that. Doug, are you prepared?
I'd like to thank the committee for taking the time to hear me here. My name is Douglas Azart from Wild Waters Outdoor Center. As Kevin mentioned, we are located at the Glen. We own property there since 1985. We started rafting on the Hudson River Gorge and Sacandaga Rivers in 1983. Just a little bit of a brief history here. We've been on the tracks forever. We supported the train when the first train started going because we thought it'd be excited for our bed and breakfast guests. It would bring us whitewater rafting customers. We were very supportive of the train, but obviously for a variety of reasons that has not ever worked out. And then we thought about possibly doing bike tours when the tracks were torn up, because there was always a talk about leaving the tracks were torn up, but obviously they're not, which is fine. And then a couple of years ago, we started thinking about getting into the rail bike business, which looks very exciting. And we've only ever heard good things about Rev Rail, so this is nothing against anything that Rev Rail does. But then the pandemic hit, and just like a lot of people, a lot of businesses, we sort of circled our wagons and just focused on the rafting that we do on the two rivers that we raft on. But now we've come through that, and we're really looking at trying to start a rail bike business on our sections of the track. And I was just going to read a little bit about what we're looking for, and then I have a handout if anybody would like this here at all. So we would like to have exclusive use of the tracks from mile markers 88 to 72. And to my knowledge, these are ones that are not being used by Rev Rail. Is that correct? Currently. Okay. As well as we like to rent the Riverside Station at Repairs, New York. Our plan is to operate a rail bike tour business combining Wild Waters expertise in the rafting industry that we use right now on the Sacandaga and Hudson Rivers, and combining that with the rail bike tours, which makes it a really fun and unique experience. The crossover of rafting guests onto the rail bike tours is perfect. Wild Waters and the Glen Lodge, which is our bed and breakfast, is location and ownership of the property at the Glen is an ideal base for our operations. We will offer trips on the north and south side of the Glen. requiring no crossings of Route 28, because we feel that'd be very dangerous. Wildwater's infrastructure, staff, and rafting expertise will provide a top quality experience not found anywhere in the Northeast. Combining a whitewater rafting experience along with a rail bike tour on the same section of the river will be a first for Warren County and will increase tourism into the area. Wildwaters has positioned itself as a top rafting operator on the Hudson and Sacandaga rivers. Founded in 1983 by myself, we are family operated. It's my son Brent sitting over there, my wife Amy, my other son Brent, Weston works in the business, and own business, and has provided guided rafting trips along this section of the tracks for 38 years. Our management and guides know the rapids and history well, which will make the offering even more special to our guests. Since its inception, Wildwaters has also worked closely with public and private entities to develop and plan contracts for rafting on local rivers, and is currently under contract for whitewater rafting on the Sacandaga and Hudson rivers. These contracts include requirements for liability insurance, workers' compensation, disability insurance, as well as financial and performance requirements. In summation, using our nearly 40 years of experience and highly regarded business model, Wildwaters and the Glen Lodge will make an excellent use of the Riverside Station and this stretch of tracks. Our location also makes this a prime opportunity to help ensure a Warren County, an Adirondack-based family business can continue to grow and support local jobs. Our location, ingenuity, and expertise in the rafting and tourism industry will ensure the county is well represented. Any questions?
Thank you, Doug. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Azart? Supervisor Garrity?
Where did planning start?
Well, right now our plan would be to start at the Glen and head north up to Riparius. And then that's on the north side of the Glen. Then on the south side, head south down to what we call Snake Block, which is getting near the 418 bridge.
Did you have any follow-up, Supervisor Garrity?
No, it's mile marker 88.
That's what my belief. We walk the tracks, and that's what we've seen. But I guess we'd have to maybe clarify. I don't know if somebody has a. But basically, it's from the Riverside Repair Station down to the 418 bridge. It's about 16 miles of track.
Those are the mileposts in that area. That's correct. Yep.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Azart?
If I could say one more thing. So in the rafting community, on the Hudson River Gorge, there are 10 rafting companies. So in the Sacandaga, there are 3 rafting companies. I'm the president of the association for the Hudson River Professional Outfitters Association. And as a company, we are very used to working with other businesses doing the same type of an operation. So my hope and goal would only be to help and enhance RevRail's business. There's no goal of mine to say I want to try to put RevRail out of business or to do any type of marketing or advertising that talks about how much better we are over another company. I don't do that with my rafting. I've never done it in the 83 years because I let my trips and my staff and the way I run my programs actually is what makes us have great return customers. And I tell you, I've done a lot of research recently. As of right now, there is nowhere I can find where there is a rail bike tour and a whitewater rafting on the same stretch of the river. And I think the opportunities that it's going to open up for this area, for my company as well as for other businesses in the area, would be fantastic.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
So we have in front of us 2 questions, really. We have the resolution to renew the contract with RevRail, and then we have the question of how to handle this proposal. Kevin, did you want to address either?
But as it stands now, and I'm not 100% on this, and again, I think I would have to defer to the county attorney. As far as RevRail's current contract, for the section of track and buildings that they use right now, we could renew, or the committee could renew their contract as it stands for this. Again, the sections they use, the buildings they use, as well as for the fee they are to pay the county next year. As far as any other sections of the track that they want to use, as well as Doug would like to use, and I think and I'll have Robert correct me if I'm wrong, now we would have two proposers. Would we go out to RFP for this? I'm not positive. I'm not 100%.
Definitely to lease out county property again, because the tracks are owned by the county, these tracks here. To lease that out, you have to go, you can make a lease for up to 5 years of this kind of county property with someone if, in this type of situation, but it would have to go out for a bid that way too. And, you know, there are developments still with the railroad thing too, to kind of keep in mind that bankruptcy in Colorado and the abandonment case filed by the DEC against the ST with the in the STB, the Surface Transportation Board in Washington. The Colorado bankruptcy is finally maybe getting to a point where it's reaching a conclusion. We don't know what's going to happen with that. You know, what the trustee on that end is trying to sell the track use rights from North Creek up to the end of the line, Sanford to Hawes, trying to see if they can sell them to a private company or someone. If there's railroads who want to come through and use it, we're limited in the ability to say no to them because it's part of the national rail network.
Kevin?
I want to confirm what you said. If we have two entities looking to use the same spot on the track, would we go out to RFP for that?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we should
Right.
put that out for a bid, yes.
So what's the will? Supervisor Dickinson, then McGowan.
Uh,
Is Supervisor Dickinson speaking?
Yes, I'm sorry.
We can't hear him at all.
I can't hear either. I don't know how you feel. I made a motion to accept RevRail's contract for next year.
There's a motion on the floor. Does anybody want to second that? Supervisor Bruno? Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, I just wanted some clarification.
Go ahead.
Between the two. I mean, I think of Stony Creek and that is more the 1,000-acre ranch. I don't know what they call it now. So RevRail wants from 418 to 1,000 acres. You were looking into? Well, please,
Yeah.
yes, I just looking for clarification here. If that's all right, Chairwoman.
Sure.
Yeah, we're looking for the whole track. And I guess part of the reasons are the e-bikes are going to allow that to happen. The one thing I'd like to just throw in here, and I believe Doug does a great business, and we actually would like to potentially work with him. I just came from a conference in Phoenix with 435 short lines. They're all really competitive, but they're all friends, and it all can work. None of them are operating on the same line. We're happy to have competition. I think there's the possibility of brand confusion with people operating on the same line so close to us and doing the exact same thing that we're doing. I think we can work with, you know, we're happy to work with other people and things, but it's our bike. It's our technology that we've developed, and we think we can take over, you know, we can use that riparious section. So that's why we're looking for the whole track.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, is there any other discussion regarding the motion to renew the RevRail contract as it's written? Supervisor Merlino?
There's a question in the corner.
Mr. Azart?
Yes.
My goal by wanting these tracks, the section of tracks that's not being used right now under contract, is not to have to go out to bid. I run a rafting company, and if I had to go out to bid yearly, every 3 years, to try to guarantee my spaces on the river, it'd be a very frustrating way to try to run your business. And I think a business that is such a customer based, dealing with people, you hire staff to come back year after year after year, you make commitment with equipment. You know, if you're at the end of your contract period, Do you buy new buses? Do you buy new rail bikes? Do you buy new stuff because maybe you're going to lose? So my goal was not to have this go out to bid. My goal was that we'd be able to get this set to track based on my knowledge and where we are being homeowners, business owners at that piece of the track. If, however, it was to go out to bid, I probably would change my proposal and I would bid for the entire track as well, because I'm not sure how you can say one section of the track to be bid on, but not the whole line. So I would just like some clarification about that, because I'm just not sure how that would work.
Robert, are you able to address that?
As before, the bids, the county would identify a certain section of track, usually by mile marker, that it wants to be able to put out for the bid out for people to have access to and a business to use it, and identify that section and put that out for bid, like it did for the proposal here that RevRail ultimately applied for, and that's where we have the contract with them. I mean, you could identify a certain section of track and a certain length of it, and identify a particular length that the county wants to be able to put out for a bid to see if anyone wants to use it for a business.
So what I've heard you say, oh, Administrator Moore, did you want to weigh in?
Sure. I just wanted to comment that if we were to go out to RFP, we could structure an RFP in such a manner as to allow interested vendors to bid on the whole track or to bid on portions of the track, or you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be rigid. We could have vendors put forward, you know, their best foot on however they want to approach it.
Thank you. Kevin?
Just to kind of further what Ryan just said, you know, if we did it for the whole track, you know, we could break up portions similar to what they're broken up now. Currently, RevRail has actually milepost 95 to give or take 87. I believe Doug was talking about 72 to 88, but it would probably be to 87. That's the open section, which is from Riverside to Thurman. Then there's the ranch section, which is milepost 72 to 68. And then, of course, from 68 to 55 is the lower or the southern section. So you know, to further on Ryan, you could put it out that here, put out an RFP for all the sections and break them up like that in the RFP. And then maybe your submittals would someone may only submit for a portion of that. Maybe they would submit for all of that.
We have a motion on the floor to accept the, Mr. Dupuy, did you want to speak again?
Our understanding is we had an arrangement with the county for 5 years, and that's still in play. And we come back every year and tell you how we did. And so it doesn't feel, I don't know what the right word is, feels wrong if the whole track suddenly goes up for bid when that contract is still in force. And then I think I'd also be remiss not to make the case. We came here and built this business out of nothing. And it feels like we're getting the carpet starting to feel a little unsteady underneath us. And that doesn't feel like a good message that this county would want to send entrepreneurs. I know you guys have to do what you have to do, and the law is the law, but doesn't feel so good.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy. I will remind the committee that we did have discussion about whether we were going to go out to bid for the entirety of the track previously. And this committee I think unanimously said that we were not going to do that during the terms of the current contract with Revolution Rail. I'm getting a nod from Supervisor Merlino. You remember that?
Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the contract with Revolution Rail for the mileage of track that they currently operate on. Supervisor Merlino.
You know, I'd like to add a little to this. I worked real hard with the Revolution Rail, almost from beginning getting down to Hadley, Luzerne area, and they're great to work with. And I have nothing against the other offer. As a business person, I think it's tough to separate two different companies on the same whole rail, because I think the 5 years or so they've been here, invested a lot of money, a lot of time, equipment. And they've been advertising and bringing a lot of people to our area. I just think it's confusing if we'd have a second group on there. I mean, I really respect the other gentleman, and it would be great if it was so much further apart, but banging up to where each one come together, I think it could be confusing and could be a problem. So it's a tough situation to decide on, but I think I'd have to go leave one company, and when their contract is over, then maybe go back and let people bid on other sections in another couple of years. That's only my comment.
Supervisors Garrity and Bramer, I do see you, but are your comments relative to the motion that's on the floor?
I think so. I'm not really sure, but that's just to renew their lease.
Yes.
Supervisor Garrity, we can't hear you.
Isn't this really just to renew their lease? Is that the way I'm understanding it? They came in, they made a presentation, they gave us the numbers that we're asked to do. Now we're just going to renew their lease, correct?
That is the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, that's all I want to know. That's fine.
Supervisor Bramer? Okay, Kevin?
No, I was going to answer Supervisor Garrity's question. That is correct. It's just for the $40,000 for the sections of track and the buildings that they have currently, period.
Call question? Can we?
Is there any further discussion?
I wanted to say I think this is a great problem, and I hope we can find a solution.
We'll discuss that next. Thank you. All right, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So is there will to have discussion of whether to go out to bid for the remaining sections of track? Seeing none, we'll move on. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll turn it over to Tim. The next item is for the contract renewal with Adirondack Glamping or Glamping Adirondack for the fairground.
That also for next year has an increase of 5%. They will pay the county $28,014 following year. He's actually looking also, I have to get a hold of the APA, but he's acting to increase the amount of tents, which would increase the amount he owes. So at this point, I don't believe the APA has told me that they were going to allow any more tents. So the current contract proposal will stand.
So you're asking that we go ahead and renew it
Correct.
as it stands.
Ready.
Supervisor Dickinson,
I'll move that, and I have a question.
do I have a second? I'm sorry, who was the second?
Dan Bruno.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dennis.
How many tents does he have?
40 currently. He would like to expand to 50.
They have APA has a density for tents?
Correct. Per acre. Acreage.
Do we still have a quarter of that property reserved for public use, or did that go away with the new vendor?
That was not included in this contract.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Supervisor Garrity?
What are the dates? I mean, this looks like it's used from 1/1 to 12/31.
The actual contract when he's on the grounds are actually from June 18th to Labor Day, which is around September 7th to 8th.
So his contract just goes from June 18th.
To be on the actual grounds, correct.
Okay. So
Do
he
we have
can't.
any kind of contractual reporting requirement in that contract?
I did not see
Nothing.
any.
There is not.
Any other questions, discussion?
So
Supervisor Garrity?
yeah. So does he have the date from 1/1 of 22 until 12/31/22? Does he actually have a contract for it, or does it start on 6/18? Can somebody answer that?
That, I think there's just a misprint in here as far as the commencement date and termination date. It should start on 6/18. 21 and go through the end of his. This past year, he extended a little bit longer because Americade came late.
Right.
So he kept it, we actually proposed it till, I believe, October, Tim? Is that correct? Just till October 1st that he had it for this year. But I think next year he's only requesting through Labor Day.
Right. Okay. So start 6/18. Thank you.
Supervisor Dickinson?
I will support the dates as actual use.
Supervisor Bruno, you okay with that?
Agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Kevin?
The next resolution I have
Tim?
is for the Saratoga Snowmobile Association would like to use our lower end of tracks from milepost 55. And they've got their permissions from the town of Corinth. They've made all their alignments with the state of New York. This is their last piece of the puzzle. They would come off roughly, if anyone knows where the golf course bend in the river, that's where they'll exit, go along Route 9 and hook up into Warren County's C4 trails, which are located in the town of Lake Luzerne behind Stewart's.
Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Supervisor Dickinson?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Supervisor Merlino. Discussion?
Are they going to cross the high bridge there?
Yes.
That's like 60 feet off the ground. Okay.
They wanted to, I should say.
They've done it before.
No,
Well, I know they have. I saw 2 kids go across there doing wheelies.
But they're actually gonna exit just prior to. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The bridge is prior to bend of the river on the south, so they would not come across that bridge.
Oh,
They would
okay.
go prior to at the golf.
All right.
Kevin?
Tim just answered the question. I wanted to correct him too. They are not going to cross
Oh,
that
right,
bridge.
right.
Absolutely not.
Too high.
They're exiting before that to tie into the lower Seaford Trail that through in Warren County and Lake Luzerne, but they are not going to cross that bridge.
Are we going to put up any kind of a barrier so they can't?
We,
But I was gonna suggest.
we can. I'm not sure that most would go over that because they're not going to have the ability. You know, most of the bridge crossings that we have, and like with Thurman Connection, when they go out, they put down either plywood or mats to be able to cross that. They're not going to have a riding surface on it. It's going to be rails. But we would still put something up, maybe some type of barricade in that area so they wouldn't go across. But they exit, way before they get to that bridge.
Supervisor Garrity?
Oh, that's my question. Are you talking the railroad bridge?
Yes.
Not the bow bridge?
The railroad bridge is 60 feet off the ground.
Right, I understand
They're-
that.
They're not going to cross that bridge.
I would think we'd have to block that off.
Yeah,
I mean, because somebody who's unfamiliar with the area.
Yes, it will be blocked off. We'll come up with some type of barricade for that area.
And to the sides, because you know how people try to
Go around.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next.
Next is a resolution to accept the donation of, $450. We've had a young gentleman that had passed recently. I've included it in the agenda. They want, I spoke with the family and they're thinking of a plaque and a tree. We haven't finalized anything. I will bring that back to the committee in January. But for now, I've taken in the donation and put it in deferred revenue at this point.
Supervisor Dickinson?
I'll move that.
Supervisor Bruno on the second. Discussion? We will send a thank you note.
Yes, I've done letters and also CC'd Amanda and Kevin Hajos.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Discussion.
The next item I have for you is the end of the year total yearly stocking report. Currently this year, we've had one of our best years at 66,214. I broke it out in my own notes just so people know. Brook trout, 9,896. Rainbow trout, 14,495. The Horn Lake, which is actually a restoration wild program, 18,875. The landlocked salmon program for Lake George, 3,710. And we surplused 19,238 to other state hatcheries. When we meet our quota, if there's fish that are left over that we no longer need, we offer them out to the other hatcheries. And we also this year did 2 trout in the classrooms, Skodak School and Luzerne School. We donate 300 eggs. The kids get the eggs through fruition into sack fry, into fingerlings, and then they let them go in a body of water of their choice. A lot of fish. There's a lot of fish.
Why the big jump in numbers?
Success rate, mortality rate. I mean, in the wild, they get 1 to 3%. We shoot generally between 60 and 70. And this past year, with all the water supply that we've got, was a banner year. That's usually my biggest issue is water. I can't turn up water that I don't have. So being a rainy season, we had plenty of water, which helps promote fish growth. Warmer water helps permit fish growth. So it was a successful year.
Awesome. Supervisor McGowan.
Just a question, my man. How do you count those fish?
It's done by sample. You do 100 sample of a fish, get an average, and then you weigh in the entire lot.
No kidding. Wow, that's a lot of fish. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Next item.
Next item we had on there under information for discussion was Doug, but we've heard from Doug, and I don't believe they're any longer anyways.
Okay.
Under referral and pending items, under number 1, we have discussion to continue regarding 2 parcels of land of county-owned railroad property in the town of Johnsburg, and I believe we're just waiting for some survey and some variance from the town of Johnsburg.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I lost sound for a second there.
That's okay. So it's regarding the 2 parcels that the town of Johnsburg is looking for, and I believe we're just waiting for some information from the town. When we get that information, then we can move forward.
Right.
Okay. And the final thing under referral pending items is the discussion regarding e-bikes on the bike path. And I think Tim and I have collected quite a bit of information now. And I think maybe the January meeting, we can start talking about doing this pilot program. And I'm not sure if we want to do again combined meeting with public safety, or if it's just falls under the public works meeting to allow the e-bikes to be on the bike path.
Okay. Wasn't this under public safety?
It was a joint combined meeting with public safety and public works.
Okay. And Supervisor Diamond was heading that up, right?
That is correct.
Is he here today?
No.
He is not.
So we'll wait for him to weigh in on this?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Supervisor.
we still have other stuff, other business, but hang on, Dennis. Yes, Kevin.
Doug is back in the room. I'm not sure if there was anything else that, if the committee had any more questions for Doug, or if he had anything else more to add, but I know he is back in the room.
Does the committee have any other questions for Mr. Azart? Doug, did you want to speak again?
One more thing.
Please come to the podium. Thank you.
One more thing, and I do appreciate your time, is we are always used to working with other businesses in the rafting community. there is no absolute one company that has absolute control of the river. And I know there is some difference because there's technically not much control in the rivers, but there are public entities that actually own put-ins, own takeouts. So they actually control where you can go into the river to make it possible to raft on the river. And many companies use it and are very successful, and we work together. Sure, every once in a while, people do show up at the wrong company, but it's not a big deal. We call the company, hey, I've got, the Smith parties here. They're supposed to be at your place, and then we send them up back and forth. That happens now. And I would have no problem, working with any other company on the tracks, because that's the way I've done it since we started business in 1983. I've never been the single entity. And I think competition to a certain point only makes your trips better. They become more innovative. You really start to focus on more how you get customers to come back to you as your company because they have a choice. I am certain that if you look at the Warren County website, New York State website, that the rail bikes are always a big hit for there, but they are the only option. Whitewater rafting, my company may not come up as high because there's 10 other companies that people could choose, not just mine. So I think competition, to a certain extent, is a fantastic thing. And that was it. So if you do have any questions for me, let me know. I have a handout. Would you like me with my contact information? Should I leave it?
Sure.
You can leave it right on the table. Right here? Sure. Great.
Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Azart?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity.
Well, I was in a meeting the other day when I heard some of the information that Robert brought up about the railroad. So I think the trustees trying to do some movement on at least the part from North Creek to Haas, correct?
I've talked with them quite a bit, and there's always been a kind of narrative of there's going to be something great happening and it's going to get sold, and it never does. So, I mean, at some point it will, because the bankruptcy case is there where the plan is ready for confirmation. They have a hearing on December 17th out there in Denver on it. So there will be some movement then. As far as I know, there is what they call a stalking horse bid that Revolution Rail Holding Company put in to use to buy the rights to use that section of track from North Creek going up to the end of the line. They put in a bid on it already. There's a couple other interested parties, a Sierra Rail from someplace out west that also does rail biking, and an individual has put in an interest in it as well. I don't know what's going to happen at the actual auction that the bankruptcy court would have the trustee hold for those track rights, whether Revolution Rail would buy it or win that auction or not. Who knows what's going to happen with that?
Can I ask one more question?
Thank you.
I heard during the discussion that the trustee would first consider a railroad company, not a rail bike company. Is that right or wrong?
Not necessarily. I may have messed that up. The trustee's going to sell it to whoever comes in with the most amount of money.
Okay, so it
the
doesn't
highest
make any
bidder.
difference if you're a railroad.
Doesn't make any difference on
Okay.
it.
I think somebody that's spoken already too.
If a railroad wants to buy that section of track, then the county would be in a position where, because of the nature of the national rail network, the county would have to allow them to be able to go through Warren to connect to the rest of the rail network.
Okay, but that's still fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Supervisor Merlino.
I got a question. If that section of rail gets sold and doesn't get sold to they're going to lose part of their business then, that we give them permission to use that track now, right?
There's a
No. Go ahead, Kevin.
There's a small section of track north of North Creek, which is milepost 0. Tim and I were just talking about to milepost 2, which is county-owned tracks. We do not own the land. We own the track.
The opposite.
And
Opposite.
I'm sorry. We own the land, not the tracks. And then above that, is also the area that Rev Rail is moving into Hamilton County, I believe, or Essex County.
That's-
That's where and we don't give them permission. They're getting that permission from Iowa Pacific or Saratoga North Creek Railroad, whomever it may be. That's not from us.
Oh, okay.
So to be clear, all those trips stage out of our facilities in North Creek. And then they put them on a bus and they drive them up to Hamilton County where they get on the track and they go north. If that section of track were to sell to another entity, it would be up to Revolution Rail to negotiate whether they're going to continue that operation with whatever company. If you'll remember, before, Omnitrax at one point stated they would be willing to try to work that kind of a co-operating situation out, but we were unsure whether the STB would let us do that, or let them do that, I should say. Right, Kevin?
I believe that's correct.
So, but we still have them running on the south line out of North Creek and in Hadley and Luzerne, so presumably they would still operate, even if they got kicked off that section. Is there any further, Claudia?
Well, Rev Rail is trying to bid, so they may end up being their own owner.
They may. Yeah, this is all public information, so. Anybody else? All right, moving on. What do you want to do next, Kevin?
I think since Thomas has been waiting here for quite some time, we'll get with Thomas and do solid waste recycling.
Great. Hi, Thomas.
So I'll go with the first one on there, and then I'll kind of turn over discussion items to Thomas. The first one on there is a request to transfer funds. This is to cover our new solid waste recycling compliance coordinator, Thomas, cover part of his salary. As we created the position last year, we didn't actually put more money in the budget for his salary. So this is for that, as well as the household hazardous waste coverage for overtime, and then the third part of that would be an amount to cover the local match for a grant, which that's the second resolution down, which would be to amend the budget for a grant for DEC, which is for education and recycling components, which involved our our composting workshops, an app that we're going to embed on our website called Recollect, which Thomas is going to talk about. So those are the two resolutions that I have in front of you.
Great, thank you. Can we move them together? No, let's do them separately. Do I have a motion on the first? Supervisor
No.
Dickinson.
Motion and a question.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Bruno? Go ahead, Dennis.
How much money are we talking, Kevin?
So to cover the solid waste compliance coordinator's salary, as well as the overtime for the household hazardous waste, that is $25,000. And I'm taking it out of Health and Human Services building and moving it into A1628, which is waste management. So it's money that is not necessarily in the solid waste management budget, but it's in the budget for this year that we can cover it. The second portion, which is the local match for the grant, I believe we would have to take that out of contingent fund, and it's a $10,000 match to the grant. It was a 50-50 grant, $20,000, and we would have to have our local match of $10,000 for that. And I would defer to our budget officer for $10,000 coming out of the contingent fund.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you, Kevin.
Supervisor Bruno, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, I was just curious. I remember we created this position this year earlier, but we didn't budget anything for it. I'm just curious why we didn't budget anything.
I can answer that. Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
when we created it, there was no money in the budget, so we just went ahead and funded it, and hoping that there would be money left over at the end of the year, which there is, and but for 2022, it is budget. You know, the money is.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I just watched Thomas breathe a sigh of relief there. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Claudia, I didn't see your hand until after the question. Was this relative to Thomas's salary?
No, it's not about the salary motion, just about whether the towns have had a chance to look further into the recycling contracts that we were brought up at the last committee meeting.
Let's get through our resolutions first, and then we'll
All
go
right.
to that, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Kevin, next resolution.
So the next
To amend
resolution,
the budget.
yeah, the next resolution is to go along with the money that we just took out of contingency for the DEC grant. This was a waste management containment, municipal waste reduction, and education program grant that we got through DEC. Actually, Chris Belden, when he was still in the planning office, got us this grant. We've already done a fair amount of work with this grant already. We've had our composting workshops. The latest thing that Thomas is working on, which is the final piece of the puzzle, is to put out some educational material for recycling to all the transfer stations. And then the other thing was to buy some different type of recycling bins for the county center, not just to collect, newspapers, to collect everything, newspapers, cans, plastics here at the county center. And the last piece of that was the Recollect app, which Thomas will start talking about in a minute, that will be embedded on our website for people to see what we're doing here in the county with recycling materials.
I have a motion to bring this to the floor.
I'll move it.
Supervisor Dickinson, thank you.
I'll second that.
Second? I'm sorry, Supervisor Bruno, thank you. Discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Great. All
All right.
right, what's next?
The next items are the discussion items, and I'll let Thomas jump right into them.
For our compost workshops, we worked with Soil and Water for those, and they were really the big piece of the puzzle. They had everything kind of put together. Our first workshop was at SUNY Adirondack, and that was definitely our more popular one. I think we had almost 20 residents come to that one, as well as some more people on the Zoom webcast. So those were very kind of important. We got a lot of good feedback, a lot of good questions, and I think it was definitely a success.
Are those materials available on our website anywhere for the public to see if they couldn't, in case they couldn't attend?
I believe Soil and Water was going to put one of the recordings up on their website, but I can follow up with them to make sure.
Could we link to that too, maybe? So
Yeah.
people can find it from ours as well? Great, thank you.
And
Any other questions? Go ahead, Thomas.
And I've also been working on the waste hauler permit. I haven't received any permits yet, but I've started to follow up with the waste haulers again. And some of them have had, staffing shortages and things like that. So they're working on them, and I'm kind of anticipating most of them coming in mid-December. Kevin?
Supervisor Hogan, nice.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we, just to kind of refresh the committee, we were making these permits in-house. We weren't going out to order these permits anywhere. We're actually making them out of our sign shop. So once Thomas starts to receive the permit applications in, which the permit application was also approved through committee, he'll start issuing those permits. I don't think we've had any necessarily pushback from any of the waste haulers as of yet. Thomas has talked to a lot of them just to keep reminding them, hey, you got till January 15th, and then there's a penalty if you're not getting them in on time. But I think he'll start shortly seeing them come through, and we'll start issuing those permits. And then, as all of you know, there'll be a quarterly reporting from all these companies as part of that permitting process, so that we will know, where they're hauling, what they're hauling, what they're picking up in recyclables, because we don't have that information now. That information for private haulers, when they come to your house and pick up the garbage, we don't know what they're picking up or how much they're picking up, but we will now have that reporting from them quarterly.
Great. Looking forward to seeing that. Thomas, have you gotten any feedback from the haulers?
Yeah, I think so far, it's been like short staff, comparing all their data and things like that. I haven't any way to call their. Many other towns and municipalities do have similar permit systems.
Okay, thanks. What's next on the agenda?
Our next piece is the Waste Wizard app from Recollect that we received some of the grant funding for. It's like a searchable database that they can add to our county website, and it's highly adaptable. So the way that all of the different town transfer stations have, individualized waste systems, it can be adapted. So if a resident searches, how to get rid of a yogurt cup or something that, sometimes they're number 5 recycling, sometimes they're number 3. I can put all of that information into this app, and it can be updated regularly by me. And we can also get usage data to see how many residents are looking up recycling information and actually using the app.
When's that going to be live?
Probably just under 2 months.
Cool. Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. Just curious, does this tell people how they can get rid of more hazardous waste like paint cans and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so there's a good example of it. The city of Troy has it, and everything, paint cans, light bulbs, construction debris, couches, anything can really be added to it, and it can be, I guess, very specific to whereas if Ridge Road accepts something like car batteries, but maybe the town of Bolton doesn't accept car batteries at their transfer station.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions on this? All right, what's next?
Thank you, Thomas. The last item we have on there is the contract. So last meeting, we were kind of given the green light, not that we have to bring it through committee to extend contracts, but we were kind of given the green light to move forward with the current contracts that we have. With that being said, Julie Butler and myself reached out to each one of the waste haulers that we have contract with and asked them, based on the recycling markets now that they are improving, if they would give us any type of discount or basically that's what we asked for, is any discount or any reduction of price that was being charged, to the towns. They did come back. I think the plastics recycling, and I correct me if I get the names wrong, maybe from Casella, they were originally at $95, I believe, a ton, and they reduced their cost down to $80 a ton. So that's a savings, of course, to all the towns. We also asked Waste Management to give us a reduction. They said they would do it based on a recycling index. And since they said the index is improved, then all the towns will start to see a reduced cost associated with some of them. Theirs were newspaper, magazines. I'm trying to remember what else. It might have been the cans or something like that. The final one was with Perkins, who was collecting our corrugated cardboard. And he said he would not do a reduction because he has not seen the amount of material that he thinks he should receive from the towns. I kind of informed him that, the estimated quantities that were in the bid were just that, estimated quantities. There was no guarantee that he was going to get that amount. So he was not willing to reduce his cost. But again, we've extended all the contracts. Now, with that being said, this next year, myself, Thomas, and Julie will get together and start looking at kind of how these contracts are. Is there a way for us to get, either a reduced fee for each one of the towns from these recyclers, or even maybe they're paying the towns for material? I think all of you received an email from Tracy First from Zero Waste Initiative. Tracy had a lot of good information in there that I'm sure most of the supervisors have read through. But the fact of the matter is, with a lot of the information that she had, the very last part of her email was what needed to be in place for us to do that, which there's an upfront cost. There's associated material or associated equipment to do with baling. Is each town going to have their own baler? Is each town going to have their own scale? And if you do that, sure, you're going to get better cost. In fact, you'll probably get paid for your recycling materials. But a couple of the companies that she referred to coming out of Pennsylvania, or I think two of them were out of Pennsylvania, maybe one out of Canada. They're more than willing to come here and pick up that material, but they want baled material. They're not going to pick up loose material of plastic or loose material of newspapers and magazines, things like that. They want it baled. So one of the things that Julie and I had also talked with the waste haulers and recyclers is they probably would give a much better price if we went to, if the towns went to single stream recycling. Now, the gist with that is we still, they have to provide us with a report of where that material goes to, but we don't always know where that end product goes. Where Tracy referred to in her email that if you don't do single stream and you do bale that material, where the end product's going. It's going to, a couple of the companies that she had listed. If we do that, that single stream and it all gets put together, most of these waste management companies now have the equipment and the machines to separate the stuff at their own facilities. Beyond that, we don't necessarily have a control. So as she has said, we would probably get a better price if we would just bring it to the end user. Problem with bringing it to the end user is they want it baled and you have to weigh it and scale it. And we don't have that ability to do it. So, going through her email, again, she has a lot of good points, but if you read the last part of her email, it talks about having the equipment, balers, trucks, maybe to move some of this down, maybe, almost talking about maybe a centralized MRF facility again. We've already had a MRF facility once and it didn't necessarily, benefit us. So then if we didn't go to that level, then we would have each one of the towns having their own balers and scales and things. And I'm not sure that we can do it. It's a great idea and it's a good direction to move in, but I'm not sure. I think most of the scales cost about $70,000 a piece. And then the balers, even smaller balers, Thomas can probably talk to this a little bit. Lake Placid has kind of a mini MRF, I guess I would call it, and they're baling material up there. They have a bunch of mini balers, but there's still a significant cost associated with those. But Thomas, if you want to talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, so after I had received Tracy's email, I had started looking into this a little bit more. Smaller balers that can generate about 1,000-pound bale are in like the price range of about $30,000. And Lake Placid, they have a recycling center there where they have about 5 balers, I believe is what I read in the article. And they have one attendant operate the station at a time, and they have residents come in, more familiar residents, they trust to separate their materials accordingly. But they have the residents put their materials like right into the baler. So it eliminates the need to kind of put them into a dumpster, take them out of the dumpster, and then bale them. So their system seems pretty streamlined, but it does require a building, 5 balers, a forklift, and some place to store all of the recyclable materials until you can generate about 20,000 pounds. And then in that case, a company would come and pick them up.
And that's one of the other things that we were talking about with even if the towns had their own balers, these companies are not going to come to pick up 1,000-pound bale. They're going to come to pick up, They want 20,000 pounds of material. They don't want 1,000 pounds worth of material. So now you have to have a place to store that. And furthermore, having these balers or having these scales at some of these transfer stations, if that was a route we would take as opposed to maybe a centralized facility, the towns are going to have to hire another attendant, you know, somebody else, because I know some of the towns are limited on the attendance that they have now.
A lot of moving parts.
There is.
Just out of curiosity, what does 20,000 pounds look like? Is it like the size of a tractor truck box, or what does it look like?
20 bales.
20-foot containers, it will take up the 20.
Supervisor,
I haven't my hand up.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Garrity. I was asking the question of Kevin or Thomas.
And
You guys, what would?
Yeah, I can say the same. It's usually a 20-yard container filled with those bales. That would be used typically, you know, 20,000 pounds or 10 tons.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bramer, did that answer the question you had earlier?
Yes, thank you. Sounds like
Supervisor Garrity, did you have a question?
Yes. My question is, we separate cardboard now, and I forget what they're paying to come pick it up. Is there a good upcharge if it's baled? I mean, if it makes sense for us to take it to a facility and bale it, or is that what we're doing basically now?
Yeah, so now I think basically since we separate the materials already and send it to Perkins, Perkins is likely just billing the material and then shipping it out to an end market.
But my question is, what is the increase if it's baled? So if the county had a baler somewhere, I'm getting a head shake no across from me, but you know, what is the upcharge if it's baled versus loose?
The market when it was up high, I read it was up to like $150 of cardboard. So a full, maybe like a 40,000 pound truckload will probably get us a pretty good buck. But
it has to be baled, correct?
Yep, it has to be baled. And I called the plastics company that Tracy had referred to in the email, and the prices have already declined by half.
Okay. And my other question for Thomas is, this cardboard right now that we put in containers, you know, some is printed, some is cardboard. Does it make a difference whether it's printed or non-printed?
It would depend on who our end market is.
See, so you're asking quite a bit. I mean, they're asking quite a bit then.
Yeah.
More than just take the container of cardboard and bale it.
Yeah.
Kevin?
I just wanted to add to that. Currently, we've gotten some feedback from Perkins that they receive from some of the towns contaminated cardboard, which means printed material in there, and they don't want the printed material. They want corrugated cardboard. But yes, if we did bale this, if there was a baler here in the county, we bailed it, we would, based on the end market, we would probably, the towns would make some money, not have to pay, most likely.
Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Hajos just hit on the key word, and I've stated this before when we were addressing solid waste. As long as there's a market for this stuff, it has some value.
Right.
You may make some money. But as we all know, this solid waste market, no matter what it is, plastics, cardboard, you name it, lumber, it fluctuates. So it's very difficult. It's like trying to hit a moving target, as they say, to nail this down to see how much you're going to make versus your investment. And these balers and such, if you're quoting like $30,000, that's just the cost of the baler itself. That's not the foundation and enclosure if it requires it, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot to consider. Thank you.
Power to run it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, DPW?
Thank you. So I'll jump right into the agenda. The first one is to request a new contract for survey consulting services. The bid tab sheets are attached, and I believe it will be with Dara Land Surveying.
Motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor Dickinson, is there a second?
I second it.
Supervisor Garrity, thank you. Any
What-
questions?
Yes, thank you. What exactly does this contract say? Is it an hourly rate, Kevin, or?
It is based on hourly rates.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Surveying in there.
County's too cheap for me.
I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item we have on there is a new contract for heavy highway construction. And again, this is a sign of a term agreement. We don't always use these contractors. The towns can also use them. You'll see that the recommendation letter in the bid tab is attached. We don't just award it to one because just in case one of those contractors is busy and we need them, say, like back in 2019 when we had the storm damage from the Halloween storm, we had to use kind of a couple different contractors. So you'll see that Peckham Roads, Luck Brothers, and Kabricki are all listed. Peckham's being the primary and then the other two being backups.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Garrity and Supervisor Dickinson. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item we have on there under number 3 is a new contract for routine pumping, cleaning, and disposal for septic systems throughout the county. And I believe, and I'm trying to get to it in my package here, I believe that's to Stone Industries. And you'll see the tab sheet and where they do the one-time service or price per year on the bid tab sheet and the size of septics that we have there.
Let's bring this to the floor.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Supervisor Dickinson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Bruno? Gotcha. All right. Kevin, there were no local vendors?
No, there was not. As you can see by the bid tab, it's either Blue Diamond or it's Stone Industries.
And quite a difference in cost.
Yes.
Supervisor Garrity, did you have a question?
No, I was seconding the motion.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I'm all
Anybody
right.
else? Anybody else?
Yes,
I'll call it. Oh, Supervisor Dickinson.
thank you. So how often do we use them? Under what situation will we use them?
But if you look at the tab sheet, you can see, but typically like the fish hatchery, we do a one-time a year service.
So they're all county facilities that have
That's correct.
on-site septic?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Number 4 is a new contract for auto body repair services that we would use, and I cannot provide you a tab sheet or who the contractor is as of yet. But I will have that tab sheet and everything ready for the board meeting. The bids are actually opening today.
Is there a reason we need to do this today without any information?
It's just a term agreement contract that we have. There's no guarantee that we're going to use, and we've done contracts like this similar as long as you have them before the board meeting.
All right, who wants to bring it to the floor?
I'll make a motion that we allow the superintendent of DPW to accept the lowest responsible bidder.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item, number 5, is a request to amend the budget, and this is for insurance recovery from guide rail damage.
I'll make it.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item we have on there is number 6 is a transfer of funds, and this is to cover overtime costs for a sign shop due to accidents and guide rail damage. This year, we've had a significant number of guide rail repair and damages throughout the county, mainly due to accidents, and our guys would typically go out there and repair them or put up barricades while the police are out there doing their investigation, or when the accident, scene is still active. So this is to cover the cost of the overtime that they have.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Supervisors Garrity and Dickinson, discussion? Kevin, any analysis on why there are more accidents this year?
No. Driving faster, not paying attention, on their cell phones. I'm not sure.
All the above. Including
All
drinking.
in favor?
Aye.
Was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Opposed? Carried.
Next item on there is a request to increase capital project. This is H396 East River Drive, Call Street. This is just to kind of cover some of the local match for the construction cost.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity. A second?
Second.
Supervisor Dickinson, any discussion? All in favor?
Oh,
You got discussion, Garrity.
that's it.
Supervisor Garrity, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just want to say I drove over Call Street this weekend. It was really, they've done a great job so far.
Yep. I was gonna talk about those during discussion, but since we're on it now, they're just about wrapped up. The only thing, the last item, which I have another add-on resolution that I want to discuss with the committee, is guide rail work. And they're having a hard time finding material for guide rail. So we're looking not till the middle of December to finish all the guide rail work out there.
It's a good job.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item is number 8, which is an increased capital project. And this is for H381 with the South Johnsburg County Route 57 over in Mill Creek Bridge project. And this is just based on the kind of the engineer's estimate that we've done to increase the local match for estimated construction and construction inspection services.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Supervisor Dickinson. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Bruno. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item on there is a notice of intent to fill position. This is for an MEO medium number 2. I sound like a broken record every time I come, but I lost probably a 5 or 6 year employee to a town where they are going to make more money.
This keeps happening.
No, it wasn't Chester.
All right, who wants to bring this to the floor?
I'll bring it to the floor.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Supervisor Bruno, thank you. Discussion? Anybody want to apologize?
It's an open market.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
You getting any applicants, Kevin?
Very, very, very few.
Yeah.
Next, Kevin?
Next item we have on there, and this is kind of goes back to the referral pending items for this month as well, is to enter into a contract with the fund and the LGA to assist the county with equipment for our salt reduction program. So over the past 3 years, and I know we talked about this last month, but over the past 3 years, the fund and the LGA have provided a significant amount of funding to, I'd say, equipment to the county that they purchase, and they haven't asked us for anything. That would include, and if you look at the resolution request that I have, 6 cameras for monitoring roads for snow and ice, salt trackers for 6 of our tandems, a stationary brine making unit, brine tanks, live edge plows, and a significant amount of training for our drivers. With the exception of the live edge plow that required a small contribution on our part, the rest of it, they footed the bill for. This year, as Eric Sy was at our last meeting, had requested that, the county kind of have a stake in the game moving forward with the salt reduction program. They were looking for some funding to supplement their funding in for this year. And I believe the town of Hague and the town of Lake George have already committed $10,000 apiece.
Correct.
And they were looking for some funding for the county as well. With that being said, they have with our, with whatever we, want to provide them with funding, as well as the funding from the town of Lake George and the town of Hague. There's basically a $200,000 program that they have this year that they will distribute that funding out of. I don't necessarily want to knock town of Lake George, but we stand to see almost $100,000 of that come back to the county this year in trackers for all of our trucks. That means every piece of equipment that we have, it's out there doing snow and ice removal, or tandems and single axles, will all have salt trackers on them. Our brine trackers on our brine applicators. We just purchased 2 new ones. They're actually being manufactured and hope to be shipped with us by middle, if not end of December. This would also involve 2 or 3 more cameras on our roads, as well as a significant amount of training for our staff and our highway manager and data collection for this year. The town of Hague and the town of Lake George have both kind of jumped in, feet first into the salt reduction program and have done an amazing job and have reduced their budgets quite a bit. I'm hoping that this year it's with what they want to provide us, it's our turn to kind of really show going into next year a reduction in the salt use that we have. And I'm hoping by the end of the year to prove that to you, that in our salt budget, that what we have budgeted for salt this year, that we don't use. I'm not going to say we're not going to use a fair amount of it, but we're by no means will we use all that salt or that salt budget this year. Fingers crossed.
So
Your proposal doesn't mention an amount.
I wanted to leave that to the committee. I know there was a lot of discussion last month. I had made a comment of 30,000. I think Supervisor Conover, the chairman of the committee last month, said 50,000. But I think it would be up to the committee. And then I think we would have to determine kind of where that funding is coming from. But I believe if the savings that I have in my salt usage this year, that we can take it from the salt budget.
I have a
comment.
motion to bring to the floor.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Is there a second?
We cut our salt budget right in half. Just like that overnight, which was a significant amount. That's a big number. I'm going to go along with Mr. Conover's suggestion and say we allocate $50,000 back to the LGA and the fund for Lake George for the salt program.
Supervisor Bruno, thank you for the second. Is there any further discussion?
I agree with Supervisor Dickinson.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Sure, Supervisor Thomas.
Is this a 1 year
It's a 1 year.
arrangement?
It is a 1 year. They typically do $200,000 each year to put towards the salt reduction program. Just as a reminder, they have their own consultants. One of them, I believe you met, or some of the towns have met. It's Phil Sexton from WIT, and then the other one is Rakib, and I'm not gonna, I think it's Omar, but I don't want to butcher his last name, from Viasis, and they're the ones that help us with the data collection and tracking, and they've helped the other towns as well as providing us the equipment.
So to be clear, I'm sorry, Supervisor Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a follow-up too. Is this equipment all used in the Lake George Basin, or is this going to be used in the Hudson River watershed, or?
This equipment we currently use is not all in the Lake George water basin. One of the cameras I have is up on 13 Lake, South Johnsburg Road, as well as Call Street. The trackers are going to be on every single one of our trucks. So that means in every location in the county that we have trucks, those trackers will be, and that's not all within the Lake George Basin.
Okay.
The brine making unit that we purchased, of course, that we have the 2 units. We have the stationary unit that I have in the Tony Pit in Warrensburg. Again, that may be, kind of to some degree in the basin, but it's used to fill our tanks. And then the mobile unit, any one of the towns within the county can grab that unit to make their own brine. And that's the proposal that we had last year with all the towns within Warren County as well as Washington County to use that mobile brine making unit. So it's not all just the basin.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Supervisor Hogan. I was wondering if this is going to be a reimbursement contract. Like they will show us their expenses and then we reimburse the contractor.
I believe I have the contract attached and I apologize. I don't know. So I haven't read through it clearly enough to see, what that was.
Which, I'm sorry, which agenda are we looking at even right now?
Public.
EW.
Thanks.
So it says, I'm trying to read through it. In accepting the grant program, the municipality would agree to contribute X amount as a commitment to improve salt application outputs and partner with Lake George Association. In receipt, the LGA will provide the remaining funds necessary for the municipality to utilize the professional services of WIT for equipment, swim certification, and I guess I won't go through the rest. So it sounds to me that we're just going to say, we're going to use money out of my budget to be able to buy that material. And Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe that's the same thing that you're doing, is you're going to move the money and then they'll provide the rest of the money out of their program to help us, further that.
That's exactly what they do. And truthfully, I appreciate their willingness to do this countywide. The Lake George Association is Lake George, the lake, not the town. So to do this program is great. I think I really appreciate them expanding it because they're concerned. They're committed.
And is Bolton not participating?
I don't know. Doesn't sound like it.
As of yet, I have not gotten that word, no.
I'd be surprised if they don't. And I don't know why they haven't done it already.
Supervisor Bramer.
I'm good, thank you.
Anybody else? Kevin.
I just wanted to add a couple more things of moving forward into this year, what we're going to be doing. We have 100 miles of roads. The county has 250 miles worth of roads. 150 of those miles are maintained by the towns. So the county maintains 100 miles of our roads. I am going to, and we're making it a goal to pre-treat every single one of those roads with our brine. The other thing I'm proposing to do is on 2 of our roads that the county maintains during the winter months, which would be Westbrook and Beach Road. We are not going to use salt at all. We're only going to use brine and see if we can maintain that through the winter of just using brine and putting no salt down whatsoever. Now, there's no guarantee. If we get an ice rainstorm, kind of all bets are off at that point. But I chose another road within Warren County. It's actually 4th Avenue in Warrensburg I've asked the town who maintain that road for us not to put salt down on that one, unless it reaches a point that we have to put it down, that we're going to try to just use brine on that road and nothing else. And the larger part of this year that we're going to do is a significant amount of data collection on how much we're actually reducing, getting all the drivers on board. That's always the crutch with every town or even the county is that, these drivers have been plowing roads for years and they continue to think that they know how much salt should go down on roads. And, a lot of the times those trackers are set to say, open the gate on that truck, maybe an inch because they only need to put down, let's say 125 pounds or whatever it may be for lane mile. But then when they leave that shop, they have the ability to open up that gate and start putting down 400 lane, 400 pounds per lane mile, because they think that's what they should be doing. We'll be able to track that this year to know that, whether one of those drivers is doing that. And that's the hardest part is to convince them, just let us do it this way. You'll see that you're not going to have any issues. So that's kind of the program going in through this year.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor of entering into this contract? And what's the amount?
50,000.
Okay. That's me, sorry. All right, the contract amount is 50,000. I'm gonna call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So the next item,
Kevin, is anything else?
the next item I have on there before we go to discussion items is I had one more resolution that kind of came up this morning because we were running with issues with guide rail. So that is a transfer would be from our county roads traffic control contracts to our county roads 2021 guide rail improvement projects, and the amount would be $39,000. And I'll kind of give you an explanation real quick. The reason being is that our vendor who puts in our rail, they are one of the ones that saw an increase in guide rail costs this year. And they cannot honor their existing contract prices because they basically would lose money. The prices for the contracts have increased significantly. And the fact of the matter is that they are not able to get the guide rail. So what I wanted to be able to do is to transfer this money into the guide rail improvement project to hold the money, because as of they're being told that they'll get that material in January so that they can complete their complete the projects that we had for them. And as of January 1st, there will be a new contract with them with new prices. So this is the reason for me for the transfer. And I know you don't all have it in front of you. I just did this morning. But it's from 470 traffic control contracts, and it would go into one of our guide rail improvement projects, capital projects, for an amount of $39,000.
I'll move that.
Thank you, Supervisor Dickinson. Anybody seconding?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Supervisor Bruno. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Supervisor Hogan, one of the things that Amanda was just pointing out to me is that we would have to transfer money out of our salt budget for this $50,000, but I'm not willing to do it right now. I'll do it in the new year. It's not needed right now for that $50,000 that we would contribute, with the fund, but I don't need to do it as of this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, we're into discussion items right now. The discussions items we have is, the first one is 2020 road and bridge projects update. So I'll go through the projects really quick. I know we're pressed for time here. 13th Lake Road culvert replacement project is complete and opened up to traffic. Palisades Road in Brant Lake, which is the inlet bridge replacement. The road has been shut down and the existing structure has been demolished, and they're starting to do their installation of sheeting for Cofferdam. Oxbow Moon Hill Road project in the town of Queensbury. That was a pavement preservation rehab project. The project is substantially complete with final punch list items to be resolved in the spring. The next one is, of course, the East River Drive Call Street project. Next week, they will complete the striping. And then the guide rail, as I said, would probably be done in December. And then the final one that I have on my list today is the Call Street Benny Brook culvert replacement. And that, to explain it, is a jack and bore type of project. They're not going to disturb the road above, and basically they're going to jack a pipe underneath the existing road. And the work has begun as of yesterday. And actually, they stated this morning that they'll start doing that jacking first thing tomorrow morning. That's all I have for projects. Jack and
Thank
Ford.
you for the update.
Yep.
Any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm going to kind of skip around. We have number 2 is North Creek Shop, and I want to touch on that, but I'll jump to number 3, which is the change order. So on the 13th Lake Road Culvert Replacement Project, we had change orders up to $88,000. There was significant increases in their excavation costs, their top course pavement, their binder course, and their base course, just basically because of asphalt and fuel price adjustments had increased so much this year. I have to come to committee not to get a resolution because resolution 600 of 2008, as well as 269 of 2008, allow me to go at $35,000 per change order up to $70,000. But it says that if I pass that $70,000, then I would bring it back through committee just for discussion to see if anybody had any issues on it. We have the money. This was 100% state funded bridge project or culvert project. We have the funding within the project. There's no extra money that I need from the county. So I'm just, kind of looking for a thumbs up from committee, but it doesn't require a resolution.
How does everybody feel about this?
No objection.
I think the silence speaks volumes, Kevin.
And the last thing I have on there under the discussion items is number 2, which is the North Creek Shop. As most of you know, Supervisor Thomas in his State of the County address in 2020 talked about us getting a new shop up in North Creek. That shop is long overdue, and not just for us. I believe Andrea will jump in with me and say that the North Creek Shop needs the same thing. So renewed discussion. I know there's some funding, our fund balance is in pretty good shape. But I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling again, that maybe we should bring up the topic of developing that shop up there again, and with of course the town of Johnsburg. We were looking at us as a new 6-bay facility. I think Andrea's highway garage, they would need about the same, but we would also need a fuel facility up there. We don't necessarily have a piece of land chosen yet. We did have a piece of land chosen back in 2020, which has since sold. I know that the town of Johnsburg has a significant amount of property up there that we're trying to work with them to make sure that it fits to, in a reasonable location, so it works for all of us. But I just wanted to kind of bring the topic back up for discussion. And again, knowing that there's a little bit of money in the fund balance. And I know Ron, if he was here, wanted to talk about this a little bit as well. But I think maybe it's the time to kind of open the discussion and hopefully, create a new facility up there sometime soon.
The town is in the process of identifying a piece of property that we could co-locate both facilities onto. And we're hoping within the next month or 2 to have a proposal to bring to the county for the property that would be this site. So that's about as far as we've gotten. We're in the process of closing down our sand mine and looking around at that stuff too. Kevin?
One of the things I'll add is, again, the shops that exist there today are not by any means within the best of shape. And as Supervisor Stroh had stated earlier, I'm not sure that we'll do this by next year. I think we're looking this to maybe if there's some funding that we could put in a capital project to hold. I think there'll be a little bit of a process to get this going, maybe in the next couple of years. But as I said, as Supervisor Stroh had stated earlier, building costs right now are significant. I'm not sure I would even want to put out a building at this time maybe come up with development plans, but that building that we have out back is a 6-bay garage. Granted, it didn't have heat, electricity, those things as part of the original bid for that building, but that was a $375,000 building, which today's dollars and with the price that has escalated on everything today, that would probably be $600,000. without heat, electricity, plumbing, things like that included that these shops would actually need. But again, I just wanted to bring the topic back up for discussion, and I'm not sure, funding wise, how we would go about doing it. But I know Ron had mentioned, maybe with some of since we're in good shape with the fund balance, that maybe some of this money would be put into a capital project or something to hold, and it to be a one-time cost to get this facility in place. And that's all I had.
Thank you, Kevin. Any discussion? Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Oh.
Again.
Want to do that? Just a referral item.
Oh, Kevin, did you have one more thing?
It was, well, I think we can cross off the referral item because that was the information for the LGA salt reduction program that we've already discussed.
Okay, you finished?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.